Lathan kind of said this group they're in the feeling out stage, right? They're trying to figure everybody out. They're trying to learn the system. He felt like it would kind of develop naturally. I do think, Lathan has a chance to be a good leader. I think some of the other guys in that room could be good leaders.
Paid all who enter, and beware of this podcast. That's right. This is the Paid podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Nick Springer, and of course, I'm here with Kevin Flaherty. We're brought to you by Emprise Bank, your partner in all things possible, member FDIC. Pencils down. I know you're probably scribbling in your NCAA tournament basketball brackets, but pencils down for now because we're going to be talking some more KU football on today's episode. If you did miss our reaction to the NCAA tournament bracket plus where Kansas basketball is, you can always check that out on our audio feeds, on podcasts, or on our YouTube channel at Kansas Jayhawks KCSN. And of course, if you haven't subscribed yet, I don't know what to tell you. You're missing out. Get on over there and subscribe over on our audio platforms, Apple, Spotify, wherever we get you podcasts, and on our YouTube channel at Kansas Jayhawks KCSN. As I said, today we're going to be continuing our spring football position breakdown. We're going to be going position group by position group over the course of now, basically through the end of spring. So over the next 5 weeks or so, breaking down each position group, getting a chance to hear from some of the assistant coaches as well as the players. And you'll definitely want to stick around for that. We'll have Chris Simpson. He's going to be speaking later on in the show, what he had to say last week about the linebackers. Plus, we got some interviews with Trey Lathan, along with Jon Jon Kamara, Jayson Gilliam, and Logan Brantley. So that's all coming up later on in the show. But first off, let's start with what we've seen so far in our analysis of this group. We're talking about the linebackers, of course, in this spring football for KU. And this is a room, Kevin, that we talked about with the tight end room, I think, are in our first position breakdown. And we'll go through every position group over the course of the spring. But this is another one where it has the potential, you feel like, to be a very intriguing room, considering what you lost from last season's team and the fact that you've brought in three transfers that you expect to be more than likely starting for this team or fighting certainly for that starting job.
Yeah, for sure. You brought in three guys who were highly successful at their previous stops. Bengali Kamara didn't necessarily play a ton at South Carolina last year, but when you look at what he did at Pittsburgh, I don't know that Kamara played at all at South Carolina last year, but when he played at Pittsburgh, there's a reason South Carolina brought him in to be an SEC caliber linebacker. And I think, Nick, that's one of the things that stands out just when you see him walking around is he looks like if somebody said, hey, you got a linebacker transfer from the SEC, you would look, back and forth, and he would probably be the guy that you would point out. Very, very impressive, as you would say, on the hoof. Trey Lathan, a linebacker who's got a lot of experience in the Big 12, started against West Virginia. You'll hear in this interview clip here in a little bit, he talks about how the KU coaches joke around with him about maybe he shouldn't have had such a great game against them a year ago in West Virginia's close win. And one of my favorites, and I think one of yours as well, Nick, is Joseph Sipp. And the best way that I can describe to Joseph Sipp is when I played football, I did not play it very well, but every offseason we would have guys who would come in from other sports, right? And they would go through the weight room stuff. They would run the 40s, and they would put up really good times, and they would generally be pretty good in the weight room, and you'd be like, okay, this guy could be a player for you. And then the pads come on, and it's like, okay, this guy doesn't want to play football, and they were usually out of there pretty quickly. Joseph Sipp is what happens when the pads come on. Like he's not the most impressive looking guy in terms of if you were just looking physically across the room and you just said, hey, pick the three starters based on how they look, in shorts and a t-shirt. You're not necessarily going to pick Joseph Sipp. But Nick, then the pads come on, and this guy is a heck of a football player. He's physical. He's a thumper. Was a first-team All-MAC guy. I think Sipp has a chance to be a fan favorite in Lawrence as well, too.
Yeah, I think the thing about this groom that you touched on there with those three transfers is that, to me, is simultaneously what's most exciting, also what could be most concerning about this group.
Yeah.
Because you have brought in 3 guys from the transfer portal that you are really banking on being pretty significant producers for this room. Because beyond that, you look at guys that you have returning. Jayson Gilliam is a guy who we're going to hear from later on in the show as well. And Jayson Gilliam is a guy that kind of transitioned a little bit to the Hawk position. Now it seems like he's firmly back in the linebacker room. He's also dealt with a lot of injuries over the course of his career, so you wonder about that. And then you look at a young guy like Jon Jon Kamara, who I know you and I were both very excited about getting to see him last year and wondering maybe if this year he might get on the field. And then you got Logan Brantley as well in the room, also another guy that dealt with some injuries, but you feel like has a chance to make an impact. So, you've got 2 of your 3 main returners, or really all 3 of them, I guess, have question marks in terms of production. 2 of them have dealt with injuries. One of them is a guy who hasn't got on the field yet, really, in Jon Jon Kamara, who I know he did play some special teams last year for KU in a couple games. And then you brought in these 3 transfers, and you outlined it. I mean, all 3 of them, 2 of them are Power 5. One of them was a guy who was all MAC level at Bowling Green with Joseph Sipp. So you're really kind of going all in on those guys being productive players for you this season. And when you think about that, Kansas, over the course of Lance Leipold's tenure, they've had some pretty big hits with linebackers out of the portal, and they've had some misses also. When you think about Rich Miller was a big hit, obviously, both as just an emotional leader of the team. Cornell Wheeler turned into a huge hit as well. But then you think about the Eric Gilliards of the world, who came from UCF and didn't hardly play. Lorenzo McCaskill came in and took a long time to sort of acclimate and make his impact. Now, McCaskill, one thing to note about him is he didn't join the team until after spring football. So it is pretty significant that you've got all 3 of these guys already on the team for spring ball, I think also is something to point out there. And then to kind of wrap that up and continue on with that is I want to go back to the beginning of last year. And a lot of the discussion within the linebacker room, even beyond that, just throughout the whole team, was the impact of Rich Miller as a leader on the team. He was brought up by Lance Leipold, by multiple assistant coaches, by guys in the linebacker room, and even guys in other parts of the team about his leadership. And it felt like over the course of the season, Cornell Wheeler stepped into that role and became that emotional leader for the team. Well, now he's gone as well, obviously. And we even talked about it in our tight end show, where this is a team that lost a lot of its emotional leaders. And when you look at the linebacker room, that's the room where, one of these guys is going to be wearing the green dot. One of these guys is going to be sort of the leader of the team from that standpoint. And so I'm curious how that develops and if that is something that Kansas misses, especially early in the season. I think any of these guys could probably develop over the course of the season into that type of player, but do we notice that early in the season where, hey, maybe they've got the on-field ability, maybe they've got the playmaking ability, but is some of that communication or some of that leadership lacking a little bit early on as you try to integrate these guys in? And then on top of all that, you'll up onto the fact that you've got a new defensive coordinator in DK McDonald, who's going to be instituting what I believe is going to be a somewhat different system. We don't really know. They've been pretty coy about what exactly they're going to be doing, but that's, I guess, would be my biggest concern with this group is you're banking on guys coming in from outside the program being productive, or guys that maybe just haven't had the chance to, or have dealt with injuries or whatever. And then B, that leadership aspect. I mean, that could be a significant part of it as well. So yes, I think it's great. I think it's flashy. You got a guy from South Carolina, Bengali Kamara, who looks the part. I think Trey Lathan, certainly he's been productive at the Big 12 level, and I have no reason to believe that he won't be at Kansas. And then you could bring a guy like Joseph Sipp. I think it helps that JB Brown is also from Bowling Green and was obviously successful for Kansas as well. I guess I forgot to mention his name talking about transfer linebackers that were successful. So that helps as well. And on top of that, Trey Lathan, you'll hear from him later in the show. He actually was hosted by Bengali Kamara on one of his visits a couple of years ago to Pitt. So some of these guys have a little bit of a previous relationship already as well. So that's all great. That I'm very excited about that. And I do think this linebacker room is going to be successful. But when you look at it from the other standpoint, there is reason to be, I think, a little bit concerned, specifically early in the year. I think if this is a group that maybe the first 2 or 3 games, they look a little choppy or it's not quite working communication wise, I won't be too concerned. But then if it continues into the 5th game, 6th game, 7th half of the season, that's where I think it could become an issue.
Yeah, and Trey Lathan talked a little bit about, how he was comfortable being a leader at West Virginia. And he echoed some of the things that Chris Simpson said. Simpson said it's a process, just like anything else. You can develop and kind of teach leadership Lathan kind of said this group they're in the feeling out stage, right? They're trying to figure everybody out. They're trying to learn the system. He felt like it would kind of develop naturally. I do think, Lathan has a chance to be a good leader. I think some of the other guys in that room could be good leaders. If you remember right, when Kansas signed Logan Brantley, I think, Lance Leipold actually said at that time, this guy's a future captain here at Kansas. And I don't know that that's going to happen right away. One of the interesting things with Brantley is he only played in 4 games last year as a redshirt freshman and had the injury. And so could he get another year as a medical redshirt there and wind up sticking it at Kansas even longer? Obviously, that's a bridge a few years down the road that you can cross if you get there. I think Jon Jon Kamara is so fascinating because of the kind of athlete that he is. And you heard even last year, like, this guy moves differently. As a junior in high school, Nick, this guy was a cornerback. And I don't mean like a nickel, like part linebacker. No, he was an outside cornerback, spent his last high school season, in the box as more of a linebacker type guy. And then, last year, he's a guy with a lot of ability. I think Ja'Cory Stewart, when you look at him, is kind of a thumper, middle linebacker type. Malachi Kirby looks really good for a true freshman being out there from a frame and movement standpoint. And so they have some interesting pieces. And I think that's where your point comes in, right? Is Kansas plays Missouri in the second game of the season, and Missouri probably going to start Bo Pribula at quarterback, have that quarterback run game, where you can do some different things to kind of get linebackers' eyes in the wrong place. It might be asking too much for this group to be 100%, full up to speed at that point. It wouldn't surprise me to see some busts at that level in that game. At the same time, like you're saying, you start getting later into the year, it's the K-State game. They're running, zone read with Avery Johnson and Dylan Edwards. Are they still making the same errors? Does everybody have the system down pat at that point? And do we have this year's Cornell Wheeler, a guy that I'm not saying he hadn't been a leader before, but Rich Miller had taken on such a lion's share of that even heading into last offseason, to your point, I think in the fall, people were saying that Cornell Wheeler was getting there. They were saying, hey, Cornell Wheeler is probably going to be the leader here, but it wasn't a for sure, no doubt thing. I feel like at this point, from a leadership standpoint, it does feel like that's something that Kansas is going to have to develop. And that's only going to come with these guys spending more time around each other, both on and off the field and in the film room, and also it helps. This is going to sound silly, but it helps when you're making plays, right? Like people tend to listen to the guy that they look at out there and is doing the right things and is making plays. And so as there maybe starts to be a little bit of separation in that room, I think leadership kind of grows naturally from that as well.
One final question here before we get into some of the interviews and whatnot. Do you feel pretty confident that if you were to try to drop a depth chart today in the third week of March, that Trey Lathan, Bengali Kamara, and Joe Sipp would be your top 3 guys? I mean, is that safe to say, you think, at this point?
I don't know. I think Gilliam's in that group right now. Like, if KU were to play a game today, I think I would maybe be surprised if Gilliam didn't get a start there. Logan Brantley has been limited a little bit, as the coaches have said, just being banged up or whatever else. He's a guy I'm really interested to see, Nick. I love the high school tape. Like I said, Lance Leipold shouted him out as a leader. He had some developing to continue to do, as so many young players do. And then I do find Jon Jon Kamara so intriguing in terms of, I'm not saying he would start if KU played today, but I think he could be somebody that as the season goes on, you're kind of looking over there and you're saying, we got to find a way to get this guy on the field in some respect, whether that's special teams, whether that's saying, hey, you get, every third series, you get a few plays here and there. I think that Kamara is a guy that feels like Jon Jon Kamara. You always have to make that distinction.
Yeah.
There's a Bengali Kamara and a Jon Jon Kamara.
By the way, No relation. No relation.
No. Different coasts, right? Like Bengal,
Yeah.
an East Coast guy, and Jon Jon's Arizona, so not quite the coast, but yeah, it's an interesting thing. But I do think that Jon Jon's going to be a guy that Kansas is going to want to start trying to get on the field at some point. But while he's working into that, it is nice to have 4 really experienced options at those linebacker spots. I think Gilliam started 5 games over his KU career, started 2 a year ago. So he's a pretty experienced guy at KU. And then you bring in these guys that don't just have starting experience, but in a lot of cases have starring experience at the FBS level. And so you have, I think, 4 guys that are right there that have the experience level that you can feel that comfort level with. And then as guys like Logan Brantley and Jon Jon Kamara continue to work, you can work them in.
You have a chance to hear from linebackers coach Chris Simpson. He spoke to the media and us as well last week, talking about everything that we just discussed and plenty more. We're going to get into that. And then coming up later on the show, you'll have a chance to hear from some of the players themselves, including Trey Lathan, Jon Jon Kamara, and Jayson Gilliam. But first, let's take a quick break. And you know what that means? That gives us a chance to remind you that you should be shopping the best college apparel around at homefieldapparel.com. You can use that promo code PAYHEAT24 for 15% off your first order. 40-plus Kansas items. I just dropped some new gear recently in the past couple of weeks heading into the NCAA tournament. If you want something to rock to support Kansas there, we talked quite a bit about KU baseball. You can get out and get some gear to support KU baseball. I'm wearing the Kansas Relays shirt, which, by the way, I guess the Kansas Relays are going to be coming up as well in April also. So you can find tons of great gear over at homefieldapparel.com for Kansas and 130-plus other schools as well. And you can use that promo code PAYHEAT24 for 15% off your first order. More KU football talk coming up next. Looking for tickets for your next event? Tickets for Less is your #1 source. Save big on every purchase when you use promo code KCSN at ticketsforless.com.
Success in real estate takes more than vision. It takes the right financial partner. When someone takes something rundown and turns it into something great, that's called a comeback story. Like Bryan Group. They take distressed properties here in KC, completely rework them, and then turn them into valuable real estate. But that kind of work needs the right bank behind it. Enter Emprise Bank. They're not about cookie-cutter loans. They saw Bryan Group's vision, backed them, and now they're making big moves in Kansas City real estate. Talk about your partner impossible. Emprise doesn't do one-size-fits-all financing. They invest in potential and back growth. Visit emprisebank.com/KC to learn more. Emprise Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
This is the PAYE podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Nick Springer here with Kevin Flaherty, and we're talking all things Kansas linebackers today. And we had a chance to hear from the linebackers coach, Chris Simpson, speaking with the media earlier in the week. Here is everything that he had to say.
Coach Leipold said basically when you bring in new guys, a lot of times there's a tendency for guys already in the program to kind of elevate it and step up. Who have you maybe seen that from so far?
Yeah, that's definitely happening with Jon Jon, certainly with Logan Brantley, and really all of them. And we've always had a culture of competition that we've tried to stress that and emphasize that so that guys, know that they're going to work their butts off and things will pay off in the end if they do. But you start bringing some other guys in that maybe come from other programs, and the guys that are in-house seem to elevate a little quicker, if that makes sense. It just happens a little faster for them because they have a little more sense of urgency. Logan is limited right now, but he is as locked in as he's been since he's been here, really. So those two in particular, but really all of them are doing a good job of that.
I know it's still early with this group, but when you think about this group of linebackers you have right now compared to ones you've had in the past, what's the biggest difference between them?
Just some of the, maybe a little athleticism and just some of the natural, Cornell Wheeler was a guy that just had some natural football instincts. Okay, so some of these guys are just coming in with probably a little bit better natural football instincts, between the, Bengali and Joseph Sip and Trey, and these guys are coming in with some of that out the gate. We tend to take some guys sometimes when you recruit them out of high school. You take guys that just haven't had to do it at this level and know all the details that are involved. So some of it's always, there's a little bit of a projection. Jon Jon's an example. You know what I'm saying? Where he was, like you said, playing corner at one point in time. So now you get some guys that are coming in the door that have been there and done that. So they just have some of those instinctive things that sometimes you just have to get over time. They have that coming in the door.
Coach Lapple mentioned Bengali as someone that has caught his attention just watching him run around. What impressed you watching him at South Carolina or Pitt? And I know you recruited him the first time around, but generally, what were the things that you liked about him, and what have you seen from him since he's been here?
Yep, had a conversation or two with Bengali when he was leaving Pitt, and then as you stated, kind of ended up at South Carolina. Just his some of that natural stuff that I'm talking about. Obviously, he's got good length. He runs well. Athletics still working with him to even take what he is and make it even better. Can still work on bending those hips a little bit more, and just things that backers need to work on across the board. But he is one of the examples that I'm giving that just has some natural, instinctive things. Sometimes it almost looks like he's one of these guys that looks like he's not even trying sometimes, because he's just a natural, efficient mover. Because then all of a sudden you're like, oh, geez, he makes some plays out there. That he's going to be productive for us, put it that way.
You mentioned Cornell. He became a leader over the course of his career. Is there any guys or one guy in particular who could maybe take that step that Cornell took?
Yep, still searching for that. Still searching for that, and in many cases, almost forcing it. Sometimes as coaches, you have to have a feel for your room and/or your unit or the team, and figure out if there's not the natural leader in the room, then we have to kind of take that over and help develop it internally. So we're kind of going through that process. That's part of why I love the spring. I just said it to the guys after our little scrimmage today is we don't have to worry about Saturday right now. It's going to get here eventually, but we can have some moving pieces and allow some time for some guys to develop as leaders and players. So we're still fighting through that process and working through that. But I think Jayson Gilliam is a guy that's been a leader for us in the past and will continue to be. These guys are walking in the door, like I said, Bengali, I think what's going to happen is the more they're around and the more they continue to make plays out there, the more they're going to become confident with their voices. As I stated with Jon Jon being confident in what he's doing, there's a level of confidence that you got to have to be able to feel like you can say something if there's those times present. You know what I'm saying? So we're getting to the point where I think some guys are ready to take a step. I'll be interested to see what happens here after spring break, because we'll get a little chance to hit the reset button, and the newness is kind of gone. So we'll come back and almost, not start over, but pick up where we left off and see some of these guys flourish as players and leaders.
Just following up on that real quick, you said in some ways kind of forcing it. What does that look like? I know you're trying to let it play out naturally, but when you say forcing it, what is that? Talking to guys? Is that on the field? Both?
Yep, all of the above. You're putting them in situations where they have to take control. Whether it's in my position, whether it's in the meeting room, asking guys to speak up and have to articulate thoughts, okay? You have to first know what you're doing, which allows you to have the confidence to say what you need to say. But then it's, okay, now let's put them in those situations where nothing's gonna happen unless you say something.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying? So you're forcing those scenarios and those situations, or I always try to tell guys to find opportunity. It's just taking a rep. You're taking another rep. Find an opportunity to lead somebody, even if it's not the room. It might be a guy.
Right.
Okay, and then you kind of just get in their ear a little bit and be like, hey, see such over there, go holler at him for a minute. He's not hustling or whatever the case is. So you're finding those opportunities to help create that internally, and then guys just gain reps, just like when they're playing, and they get more confident to say something and do something when they see something.
Cool. Thanks.
When someone like Bengali comes in who has a history of playing at multiple different positions and multiple different schemes, Do you like have an initial idea when you bring him in of where he fits in your system, or is it something where you need to see him on the field to figure out exactly what kind of spot you think that's suited for?
A little bit of both. But you know, I think for a guy like him, you're looking at skill sets, and then you're looking at what it is that you're doing schematically that matches those skill sets. So you're putting guys in position that they can use what they're doing to their advantage and our advantage. And certainly he's one of those guys that has a broad skill set, so we should be able to use him in a lot of different ways, whether he's a stack backer or coming off the edge or whatever the case is. There's a number of things that he can do for you, and you see those things at his previous spots. You know, so it makes it a little bit easier to say, yeah, he can do that when you've seen it on film already. John, you coming out of the bullpen over there?
I was going to ask what's it been like new coaches on the defensive staff. I know you've been with Lance for a long time, and how's that all coming together chemistry-wise?
Good, great. You know what I mean? We've got, you know, the funny thing is the way things work out right now in this day and age is that a lot of times guys that you're working with were already in the building in some way, shape, or form. So they're just maybe escalating their situation. So that's the case with us. You know what I'm saying? With Brandon Shelby being an analyst and now on the field, and you know, some other guys that have already been here are working with us. We bring in some new analysts with Joe Deneen coming back home and Matthew Burkett and whatnot. So some different voices and maybe different styles. It's always good, even for a old head like myself. It just allows me to grow as well, which is a benefit. And you know, it's changing some things schematically. I've been doing the same thing for a long time. It almost makes me feel rejuvenated and re-energized, that I've almost changed jobs without having to relocate, if that makes sense, because I'm learning some different things, which has been really exciting. And same thing with our players. It's been good seeing some of the changes, some of the things that we're doing. I think it'll show up on Saturdays, you know, this fall.
You mentioned Joe there. He's a Kansas guy, but what has he brought to the defensive staff overall?
Well, I tell you, Joe has been good because he was here previously. Okay, so he can speak on maybe what it used to be versus what it is, and but yet he's had some experiences in between there. So that's been really good for us, I think, to be able to know what it used to be, and he can then articulate that to the players as well. You know, and he's a really good football coach. You know what I'm saying? He's smart, he's intelligent, he knows the game. So he's helping out, you know, grabbing some younger guys and working well with Coach Anatolu. You know, Coach Anatolu's handling special teams and working with the DNs. But you know, Coach Deneen is kind of working hand in hand with him, with Coach O taking the charge.
Is there an advantage to a guy like Trey Lathan having experience within the Big 12 already?
I think so. We've almost even referenced that in many situations where we're talking about some of these new guys talking about, here's what we see a lot in this league. You know what I mean? We see a lot of this or that in this conference, and Trey can help, you know, emphasize that and stress that and either agree or disagree, but you know what I'm saying? Like he's able to know some of the things that we're doing. And then of course I'll mess with him every now and again. Now he's got to go get after West Virginia's quarterback instead of, you know, cheer for him. So he's still got friends back there, and rightly so. And but he's doing a great job for us, and excited. He's he's wearing crimson and blue now.
And then how's Joseph Sip done? I figure he's probably a guy that looked better once the pads came on than he did running around a little bit. Yeah, no, he's doing a good job. Again, he's another one. Like I said, some of these guys just have some natural feel, some natural instincts, and he's one of those for sure. He's able to just kind of get himself in position, continuing to learn. All three of those transfers are, as well as the incoming freshmen, the early enrolled freshmen. But for those guys, it's a little bit more of a translation. They're just having to take what they maybe already knew and convert it to our language, which, you know, they're doing that. It'll really be good after spring ball, like I already stressed and emphasized, because our install will slow down significantly. We've thrown a lot at him in the first part of this thing,
But when we get back, it'll start to taper off, and we'll just keep running the same stuff over and over again, so we can continue to clean things up. And I think those guys will really be playing fast by the time we get through, practice 15.
We spent some time talking about the leadership for this linebacker group and the team at large. Chris Simpson, you heard him speaking about that as well. So that to me is something to keep an eye on. Like we said, I'm not doubting the talent or capability of this room at all. In fact, I'm actually quite excited about it. Like we highlighted with two FBS guys that have been productive and another guy coming from Bowling Green that was really good as well. The question to me just becomes, okay, can these guys step up and gel together? And the good news is they still got plenty of time to do that. So we'll take another quick break, and then when we come back, we'll be hearing from the players themselves, speaking about everything we've been talking about as well. So stay right there. We'll be right back.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
This is the Paid Podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network. I'm Nick Springer here with Kevin Flaherty. And let's hear from some of the players. Why not? We got a chance to hear from 4 different linebackers out of this room earlier last week, speaking about how things have been going so far during spring practices. The team, of course, by the way, is off this week for spring break. So that's something to keep in mind. They get to spring break off. So hopefully they are enjoying their time away and maybe with their families or so on and so forth. But we got a chance to hear from 4 of the different players in this room. Let's start with the newest one, and that's Trey Lathan, transfer from West Virginia. Here is everything he had to say when speaking with Kevin and us.
It's been like acclimating to life at Kansas.
It's been pretty good. Morgantown was a lot different from here, so it's been a good experience, getting into a bigger town, more people, more things to do and stuff like that, so it's been pretty good.
I'm curious, obviously you're in the Big 12. You've had perspective of KU from the outside. Sure. What's the biggest difference between what you thought KU was versus what you've seen since you've been here?
I guess honestly it's just probably the living part. I didn't expect Kansas City and stuff to be so close and the town to be so big, and have all these great people here. So I think that's been the biggest part.
And for you, when you decided to come here, what were some of the reasons why you decided Kansas was the place for you?
Just Coach Lightpole and Coach Simpson and Coach DK. I thought it was a great fit for me coming out of the portal. I thought they could take my game to the next level, so that's why I came here.
How did they go about showing you that, hey, we think these are the areas you can improve and where you can
They had a slideshow for me, about some plays, some good plays I did and some bad plays I did, so helping me, teaching me how to get better within those plays in my recruiting vision.
Yeah. Were any of those from the KU game? Or?
Oh, yeah, I had a couple plays from the KU game, yeah.
Nice, that's what I mean.
Trey, when coming from West Virginia to here, are there any differences with the defense and what you're playing?
Yes. So at West Virginia, we played a 3-4 odd, so there was a lot of boxing and spilling that our linebackers had to do. And the difference here is we run a 4-2, sometimes 4-3. So we got guys that could spill and box all those things, so our gaps are a little bit easier to read.
As a linebacker, what do you do well? What are your strengths?
For me, I think just having a receiver background, I think just finding the soft spots in the zone and coverage. And then, what was the last part?
What are your strengths and what do you
strengths,
do?
I feel like I read the run really well. I feel like I've been in college a long time, reading guard pulls and stuff like that, so I think I read the run.
As somebody who plays downhill the way that you do, how much does it help having a defensive tackle group like that in front of you?
It helps a lot. It makes things a lot easier. You don't have to think as much. You could just play.
We've heard from plenty of transfers about Coach Sleeve and the work he does. What's been the biggest thing that you've been able to maybe gain physically, mentally from working with Coach Sleeve?
Definitely more flexibility. I feel like Coach Sleeve, he definitely prioritized stretching and a lot more stuff, implemented that throughout his workouts instead of us just lifting a lot heavy weights at a lot of times. So definitely flexibility.
What was your first impression of Coach DK?
He was just fired up. The first time I met him, he was fired up, teaching me just plays. He came from the NFL, so he was just trying to show me how he used me and stuff like that. So I thought highly of him the first time I met him.
Is that exciting for you as an NFL resume?
Yeah. It's one of the reasons why I came here.
Did he show you NFL clips or other college clips, or how did he show you how he was going to use you?
He just showed me just X's and O's on the board.
For you, what's been the biggest change, acclimation process for yourself on the field, in the facility, being in a different program?
I guess it's just the culture here. I know it's a lot different from where I came from, so just acclimating to that culture and just like suffocating like the mediocrity out of the program and stuff like that. So definitely just acclimating it.
You've been around football long enough. What's it like with you guys from the portal, the remaining guys that are back in the program? What do you see overall from the group so far?
We got a pretty good squad. There's still a lot of more pieces that we can add, but we still got a pretty good squad that they retained, and we're working hard. Those guys work hard. So.
What have you noticed from Bengali?
Trey, thank you.
Bengali. So I actually knew Bengali. He was my host coming out of high school at Pitt when he was there. So I think he's a great player. He plays with tenacity. He's a great dude, and I like being around him.
Do you guys talk a lot about reconnecting when you had that sort of experience with someone in the recruiting process, and all of a sudden now you guys are back on the same team together?
Throughout the recruiting process, I knew he was coming here, but I didn't really talk to him about it. But eventually, when I decided I was coming here, I told him I was gonna come.
What was your first impression of him when he was your host?
I didn't even watch really Pitt, but I like being around him. I had a good time. He showed me a good time hanging around with the guys there. So.
You mentioned the culture here is different. In what ways? What ways is it different for you so far?
Definitely demand the standard here. And it's not a choice. You feel me? Like a lot of programs, they have a choice, but here's not a choice. It's one thing I think Coach Leipold and Coach Steve do really well. You really don't have a choice.
Was that kind of made clear to you during the recruitment process of what you were getting into, or anything?
I didn't know what I was getting into, honestly. But but the first I think 7 weeks I've been here, it's definitely been a shock for me. So.
Yeah. What about maybe just the campus, the city of Lawrence? Anything about it that's really surprised you, or what?
There's a lot. There's a lot of food options. Morgantown had a lot of chain restaurants, so I'm definitely getting used to having all these options to eat at, and just dine in, with my girl and stuff like that. So.
You said when they showed you the video clip of some plays that you had that you did well, and some things that maybe you could improve on. You said some of the things you did well came against KU.
Yeah.
Has the staff teased you at all about that? Like, hey man, you could have not played maybe so well against us.
Yeah, I think the offensive assistant, offensive line coach, every day he tells me he's so thankful that I'm wearing the right blue and white. So, but yeah, it was a play that I had got a little shot on Jalen. He wasn't too happy about it, but
Coach said you guys had some scrimmage stuff. How'd that go? Did anybody stand out?
It went really good. Our defensive line played really well. Sip and Bengali, they played really well. Our running backs ran the ball really well today. Quarterbacks did a pretty good job. But overall, I think the team did a really good job.
What's been your impression of Daniel Highshaw being across from him?
He's funny as hell to me. He works hard. He's a natural leader, and it's good that they retained him, and he's a big piece of our program.
Is there a leader in this room yet, do you think? Or is
in the linebacker room?
Yeah.
I think not yet. I think everybody's still feeling their way out a little bit, getting used to the drills, getting used to the team, the calls and stuff like that, but I think it'll come natural.
Going through past spring balls in your college career, do you feel like there's a length of time where usually that figures itself out?
Yeah, I feel like when you're comfortable, when you get most comfortable, that could happen at any time. But when you're most comfortable, I think that's when the leadership starts showing.
Are you someone who would, if that naturally comes your way, step into that role?
Yes, sir.
Did you feel like you had that role at West Virginia?
Yeah, I did. There was a lot of guys that came before me, and just learning what they do, and then when you finally get in a position where you're making plays and you're being somebody you could count on. A lot of young guys and a lot of team look for you, so definitely being a leader, that stuff helps.
That was Trey Lathan, a transfer from West Virginia, joking around about a little bit of the fact that he's played against Kansas. He played against Kansas last year in a game that unfortunately did not go KU's way late, and West Virginia got that one. But that was Trey Lathan. Next, let's hear from Logan Brantley, a guy who we talked about as well earlier in the show, somebody that you hope maybe can step up a little bit. He's been dealing with injuries over the course of his career. He talked about that. He talked about leadership and more. Here's everything Logan Brantley had to say.
How challenging was last year from an injury and health perspective for you?
You know, I feel like everything happens for a reason, you know. I feel like this was God's plan, you know, as, you know, injury is not, you know, ever fun in football, but it's part of the game. So, you know, just, you know, the healing process has been good. So, you know, getting back to it this year is going to be a lot of fun.
We've heard a bit about when so many new people come into a group, how it can help returning players as well.
Right.
Have you seen that? Have you felt kind of additional, I guess, motivation to kind of prove yourself as well?
Yeah, you know, the transfer portal brings a lot of competition. You know, it grows teams. You know, have a lot more competition in the room and just push harder. You know, and have more leadership in the room. You know, we gotta bond together. You know, we don't know each other as well yet, but you know, I feel like the winter has, you know, allowed us to come closer together. So it's been fun.
Logan, what have you seen from DK McDonald as a defensive coordinator?
Coach DK, he loves, you know, he loves defense. You know, he just wants us to come and pursue the ball and hit. You know, so, you know, in practice we've been really big on loafs. You know, everyone got to run to the ball. So, you know, our defense is playing fast. You know, obviously we got a lot of people that still need to get in the book and, you know, understand what we're doing out there. But it's gonna be fun when we get on the same page.
You mentioned with Cornell moving on, there's not necessarily a void, but an opportunity for others to lead. How have you seen that process working out here in the early weeks of spring?
Yeah, that's funny you brought up Nell. I miss him, but I feel like, you know, we just have to understand that Nell's not here no more. So, you know, it's time for the other linebackers in the room to take that leadership role. And, you know, when things aren't going as they should in practice, you got to step up and say something. So, you know, I've been trying to step into that role a little bit when things are kind of flat and things like that. And also the other guys like transfers like BK and stuff, like saying things when, you know, things are flat. So you just got to, you know, be confident and just know what you're talking about and, you know, push other guys to go faster and stronger and keep grinding the weight room.
Does it feel natural already, or is it going to take time as you become older later for that to feel as natural as you would like it to?
I feel like that's kind of just my personality. You know, it's never been really hard for me to just kind of lead. You know, I feel like once you know kind of your linebacker room and who you're dealing with, you know how to kind of talk to them and push them and make them go harder every practice. So
you mentioned trying to get the guys to bond together, some of the new guys versus some of the guys returning. What are some ways you guys do that, maybe on the field and maybe off the field too?
I'd say off the field, in the weight room, you know, our racks are pretty close together. So, you know, we're always dapping each other up, you know, pushing each other, you know, bang out the next bench rep or something like that. So, you know, that's kind of built us closer. You know, we've always, you know, been out there, you know, communicating and things like that. So that's also going to build the chemistry and things like that.
Thank you.
Just looking at the linebacker room this year, you talked about guys stepping up and stuff like that.
Right.
What does that entail for you personally? Like, what do you want to showcase that you can do to help fill the void that Cornell left behind?
I feel like the biggest thing is in the linebacker room. Growing up, I always felt like the linebacker had to be the vessel of the defense, you know. So the leadership is the biggest part, you know, what Coach Simpson is trying to stress, that needs to come out the linebacker room. So, you know, guys just stepping into that new role of just taking charge when the defense is flat out there is just the biggest thing. You know, that used to be Nell, but now Nell's not here no more, so that has to be us. So that's the biggest thing we need to step into right now.
Yeah, have you talked to Cornell about like taking that lead?
Right.
Like, how do I make it easier for myself? Per se?
Yeah, you know, I'm always you know, talking to Nell in Nell's ear, and he's giving me good tips and things like that. And I think the biggest thing that Nell was saying to me is just staying level-headed and just knowing what I'm doing. Because once you do that and people see that, now they can trust you and understand what you're saying, and you know, you can get on them sometimes when things aren't going right.
That was Logan Brantley speaking with us and members of the media. Next, let's get to a guy that, as you said, Kevin, maybe has the most experience at KU out of anybody in this room, and that's Jayson Gilliam. He had a chance to speak about sort of some of his journey, which has been dealing with a number of injuries over the course of his career and what that's meant and how that's helped him be more mentally tough, and maybe he could be a guy that helps lead this room. Here's what Jayson Gilliam had to say.
The process of building leadership in the linebacker room, and you're a guy who's been here for a little while. What have you seen from that sort of role?
You know, just filling up in those spots that people have left. You know, from going all the way back to Rich Miller when he left and that senior group left, and then we had a big senior group leave after this past year. So you know, just taking what I know from what Sleeve has taught us and in my experience here on the field, off the field. You know, just trying to be that player for them. guys in the room right now.
You started off your career as a DB and moved into the box. Jon was a high school DB for a while. What's the biggest challenge from moving close to the line of scrimmage?
Right. So, just being a DB in high school and coming to college and everything's moving faster off rip. But, being out in space and now having everything happen a lot more quicker and faster and being able to see things is kind of a learning curve for really anybody who comes in and plays in the box from playing out on the perimeter. So I think that's the biggest thing.
What have you noticed from the new guys so far?
They're really good, really good. I love them. I love them to death. We brought in some really good players. We had a big senior class who graduated, and now we're just reloading, ready to go.
What have you noticed from Coach McDonald and his new defense?
I love it. It's simple. You get to play fast, play physical. A lot of running around, making plays. He puts us in a really good position to make some plays. So I'm really excited for the season.
I've heard some coaches say that when so many new people come in, it can push the people who are still around to compete even more. And have you sensed that at all from the returns, especially in the groups that lost a lot of people?
100%. In this program, it's all about competition anyway. And then just bringing in so many more transfers after everybody has graduated and left. I know that just pushes everybody who's here, not only in my room but in other rooms too, just to a lot just that more competition, more people around, more spots to be open, plays to be made. So
have you noticed Logan grow over the time that you've been here?
He's taking some big steps. He's a great player. It's finally starting to click for him, and I'm really excited about what he can do and how he can contribute for this year.
How have you changed your body since you got here? Because it seems like maybe you put on a little bit of bulk this offseason. Right.
Yep. When I first got here, I was like 190 pounds. Now I'm like 225, creeping up to 230. So getting ready to play in that box. So. It's definitely been a transition since I first got here, but yeah.
Is Katie O'Connor your best friend then?
Yes,
in terms of putting that on and keeping it on?
A lot of text messages, a lot of meetings, a lot of meals. Yeah.
Well, what's she on you to eat more of?
Just bigger portions. Proteins, carbs, vegetables. Having snacks in between my meals. Snacks before I go to bed. Protein shakes. So it's been a whole routine that I've kind of mastered.
Just looking at your body transformation, how difficult is it to keep the speed that you have while walking?
With Sleep does a really good job with how he prepares us for that. We always focus on being able to move and bend and speed while also lifting heavy weight and eating. And he has a really good plan. So does Miss Katie with keeping that speed and mobility to also putting on muscle and weight and stuff like that.
Do you have specific goals for yourself this year?
Just to win. Help the team as much as I can. Help my linebackers make the plays I need to make and just win. I feel like coming off the field 5-7, I feel like it really eats at me and people who left, and I want to be able to change that for my last year. So.
That was Jayson Gilliam, and last but not least, a guy that you and I are both excited about, Kevin, that one of the younger guys in this room is Jon Jon Kamara, coming from Arizona over to KU. He was a part of that group of guys with Dre Gibson and then Deshaun Warner, who ended up transferring out, but those guys that all came from the same high school out there in Arizona. And Kamara, he talks about here some of the weight he's put on and how he's been building his body up and how he hopes to impact this team. Here's everything that Jon Jon Kamara had to say.
Been like just your first, coming up on a year in the program?
It's been great. Been learning a lot. I'm starting to get comfortable every day, taking it day by day, and I'm just blessed to be here.
What do you think about yourself when you stepped foot on campus last June and now? Where do you feel like you took the biggest steps forward?
It's just the playbook. I know the playbook now, so I'm able to play faster and I'm more comfortable, and it's been allowing me to make more plays than I made past fall camp, and I just feel comfortable now.
We saw you get on the field last year for some special teams. How much did that help you just get a feel for college?
It helped me a lot because they didn't have to do that. I could have just sat out the rest of the season, but they allowed me to use my 4 games, and I'm thankful for that.
What do you think, and when you think about coming back for spring football, how do you like getting in for those 4 games and just practice overall? How did that help you kind of hit the ground running during spring?
It helped me a lot. I got my feet wet a little bit, and now I'm just ready to take it day by day and just get better.
Take us back to when you arrived at KU to where you are physically and body-wise now.
I mean, I'm 10 times better. I thought I came in here prepared, but Sleeve has took it to another level. I feel the best I've ever felt, and I'm just ready for whatever's ahead.
Do you remember your weight when you got here?
216.
And what are you at now?
228.
Nice. And how much more, I guess, confidence maybe do you feel when you're on the practice field going against the offensive line, guys like that?
I feel very confident. I'm going up against a good group of guys, and they make me better each day, but I like my chances against them, but they like their chances against me too, so like we just make each other better every day.
You guys are combining returning players and portal players in your group. What have you seen from the group?
Man, this group is like, it's a unique group of guys. Like our bond off the field is amazing. Like I feel like they brought in like the right group of people for the locker room and for on the field too. Like we all been getting along. We all enjoy each other's company. It's no bad blood, no nothing. We're just all trying to make each other better.
When somebody yells Kamara, both you guys don't look, do you?
Nah. I mean, nah.
Off the field, what have you guys done in that group maybe to get together? Do you guys hang out? What are some things you guys do to help kind of bond together?
We play the game a lot. Like we all NCAA, we all be playing a lot. And yeah, that's how we kind of get closer off the field.
A couple coaches have mentioned when a lot of new transfers come in, it can push the returning players to compete even more. Have you sensed that in your experience, and what's that been like as one of the returnees trying to take a bigger role?
I've just been trying to hone in on my process, get better each day, and work on the things that like I wasn't the best at last year. So I've just been trying to learn, get better, and I've been learning from the guys who came in. Like BK, he's taught me a lot. He's helped me as much as I've helped him. So it's just like we're just making each other better.
What are some of those things you're working on that you feel like, you didn't do that well last year, but you wanted to get better?
Me using my hands and being more physical. BK, he helped me a lot in that, and Coach Simpson too. That's one thing that they told me I need to get better at, just being more physical, because I got the body to do it. I just need to do it.
Is there anyone you've seen step up as a leader at all in any way yet?
I think Jay Gill is just naturally the leader. He's been here the longest, and he knows what he's doing. He's the one who leads us right now, but I think we all have the capability to do it. Just somebody's going to step up eventually, but right now I think it's Jay Gill.
What sort of goals do you have for yourself? I know you guys are about to go on spring break, but when you guys get back, what sort of goals do you have for yourself for the final kind of third of spring?
I just want to just keep making improvements. Just keep making improvement, because I'm going to let the film speak for itself, and like the coaches are going to see that I'm constantly improving, and I just hope that that translates on the field and off the field.
That was Jon Jon Kamara speaking with the media as well. So there you go. You get a chance to hear from a little bit of everybody in this room. One of the new guys, Trey Lathan, a couple of the more experienced players, guys that have been in the program with Jayson Gilliam and Logan Brantley, and a guy that is an up-and-comer, hopefully, in the future in Jon Jon Kamara. Kevin, before we wrap things up here on the show, any final thoughts about this group? I know we spent some time talking about them earlier in the show, but any final thoughts you got before we wrap this one up?
No, this is a fascinating group. I think if people were coming out to spring practice, this is probably one of the groups that they would circle and maybe put about 5 exclamation points next to see how they were doing. And I think it's a group that has a chance to be pretty good by the end of the year, especially with that experience. I like that Trey Lathan actually is just a junior, so he gets to not only have this year, but you saw the jump that J.B. Brown took, and it took J.B. Brown, I feel like, about a half season or so to really start getting in, and then he was excellent. I thought for a lot of last year was a major playmaker, and so I think that this is a room that is pretty well set up this year. And then when you look at both who's coming back next year, some of the guys that they're adding from the high school ranks, like Josh Galbraith, who I know you've seen in person as well, I think this is a room that has a pretty bright present and what looks like a pretty bright future too.
Yeah, it's a room that I am certainly very excited for heading into this season. I think just based off of some of the athleticism and playmaking that these guys have on the field. Again, I think it's fair to still have some concerns is too strong of a word, but just curiosity about, hey, you're bringing in 3 new guys. How is that going to translate at KU? Plus, you got a new defensive coordinator as well with DK McDonald. How's that all going to gel together? You're looking for maybe somebody to fill that leadership void as well. So still some questions, I think, but a room that nonetheless, I think you and I are both very excited about heading into the fall. So that's our KU football position breakdown for today of the KU linebacker room. If you, of course, liked what you heard or watched, if you're on YouTube, be sure to subscribe. Hit that subscribe button on Apple, Spotify, on audio, and of course on our YouTube channel at Kansas Jayhawks KCSN. Like I said, we're going to be pumping these out over the course of the rest of spring, getting a chance to hear from assistant coaches as well as the players themselves. So definitely stay tuned all throughout the rest of spring for more KU football spring content. We break down each position group over the course of the next 4-ish weeks of KU football spring practices. Also, for KU basketball, you'll definitely want to stay tuned coming up later this week for our discussions of the NCAA tournament for KU. As it was announced, they're going to be playing Arkansas on Thursday evening. So be sure to have that notification bell on for after the game. Look for our post-game discussions of that as well on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're looking for a little bit of a more in-depth preview and reaction from us to the NCAA tournament and KU's bracket that they're in, you can go back and check that out as well anywhere you get your podcasts and right here on our YouTube channel also. But until then, he is Kevin Flaherty. I'm Nick Springer. We will talk to you again soon. See ya.